It's September 28th, 1998. The Giants trail the Cubs 5-0 in the top of the ninth. They're playing a Game 163 tiebreaker. The winner faces the Braves in round 1 of the playoffs. The loser goes home. San Francisco is down, but not totally out. A monster looms in the dugout, due to hit 5th this inning. If each of the Giants' first 4 batters reach base, this game gets interesting. They start off the inning with consecutive singles. Cubs manager Jim Riggleman calls upon veteran lefty Terry Mulholland. Mulholland started yesterday's game, throwing 8 innings and over 120 pitches. Yet here he was, with no rest, on to face the top of the Giants' order. Don't ask me why. Stan Javier jumps him for an RBI single. Then Ellis Burks works a 5-minute, 10-pitch walk, which brings the tying run up to the plate. Barry Bonds has been the best player of the 90s, with only Ken Griffey Jr. rivaling him in terms of reputation. Jr. scored the walk-off run that won his team a playoff series in 1995. Right now, Bonds has the chance to play hero in an even bigger way. He has a few walk-offs under his belt, some off Hall of Fame closers, but he's never once produced a game-winning play that had serious playoff ramifications. If I'm being honest, it's insane to expect a game-tying grand slam from anyone, even the future home run king. But Bonds has 6 homers and 45 at-bats against Mulholland, and the veteran pitcher was clearly exhausted, especially after the Burks at-bat. Come on, Barry, prove those doubters wrong. Just one swing to rewrite history.
Sosa tagging his Miller, he'll score.
He got his pitch, a 91-mile-per-hour middle-in fastball. He drove a laser to right field. He just got under it, and he didn't do enough. For the second time today, Bonds stepped up as the tying run with the bases loaded, and for the second time, he failed to execute his heroic moment. That's right, his previous at-bat came with 2 outs and the bases juiced in the top of the 7th. Down 4-0, he rolled over a slider with 1 strike, ending the Giants' first real threat of the game. This Game 163 got attention because Slammin' Sammy Sosa carried his team to the playoffs for the first time on the back of a 66-homer season. The win solidified Sosa as league MVP. Bonds' futility was hardly acknowledged. It was expected at this point. In baseball, great players can play their best, and their teams can still fail them. No ball player can single-handedly carry their team to a ring. I made a video this time last year on how the Angels have failed Mike Trout. They only made the playoffs once during his peak decade of play. For that reason, lack of team success in this sport isn't seen as an individual failure. Thus, Bonds can be considered the best player ever, even without a single championship ring. The thing is, Bonds did have the opportunity. His playoff futility is largely due to his own failures. In his first 5 playoff series, Bonds' teams went 0-5. In all but one of those series, he had an OPS below 700. In his first 27 postseason games, the all-time home run king hit 1 single homer. He eventually rewrote this narrative, and we will get to that. But for now, we have to start from the beginning. His first 3 playoff chances came with Pittsburgh, well before his hat and shirt grew 3 sizes. But don't let that fool you. Bonds was already the best player on the planet before he started the roids. His first playoff appearance was in 1990. He was the obvious NL MVP, achieving a 30-50 season, walking more than striking out, winning the Gold Glove in left field, and hitting .300. For most players, this is easily their best season. But since Bonds is Bonds, his 1990 tends to be forgotten. It's not in his top 5 seasons, and it's probably not in his top 10 batting seasons. Either way, he broke out to become the best hitter in the National League. The Pirates hadn't made the playoffs in 11 years, and they hadn't been especially close in any of those seasons. If Bonds' 10-war season was a still great but more modest 4-6 wins, there's a good chance the Pirates would have fallen short again. He was one of just 2 Pirates to homer over 17 times, and he was the only Pirate to steal 15 or more bags. He was also easily their best defender by total zone. In the NLCS, the Western champion Reds only had one prerogative: don't let Bonds win. The Pirates batted Bonds 5th in their lineup because lineup composition was archaic and stupid at the time, so he didn't take his first at-bat in Game 1 until the 2nd inning. He popped out. His second time up, he walked. Then Sid Bream drove him in with a game-tying homer. Bonds knocked Jose Rijo out of the game with a base hit in the 6th. Then he just missed a solo shot to center in the 8th. All he did in the field was catch a couple cans of corn and nearly throw out Barry Larkin at home. The Pirates won 4-3 after falling behind 3-0 in the first inning. Bonds' performance was nothing special, but getting on base twice in 4 tries and then driving a ball to the warning track is about as mundane a game as Bonds will have. The Pirates didn't need him to be Superman to win this series. All they needed was Bonds to take what he could get if the Reds were pitching around him, but his struggles with runners on began early in Game 2. The broadcast acknowledges how well Bonds typically hits lefty Tom Browning.
Bonds has had 10 hits and a .400 average against Browning.
Browning sits him down in 4 pitches, including 2 big whiffs in the zone. In the 6th inning, he came up again with 2 runners on. He hit a lazy fly ball to right, and then Andy Van Slyke got doubled up trying to advance to third. Then, Barry Larkin robbed Bonds of a potential rally starting base hit in a 1-run game in the 9th. 0 for 4 in a game where any offense could have been the difference between a win and a loss. I'm not going to go through every single playoff at-bat of his, but as you'll come to see, this type of game happened more often than not. The Reds simply outmatched Pittsburgh in 1990, winning in 6 games. Bonds' only real contributions came in the Game 5 victory, when he drove in and scored a run, since he pitched around him for 3 walks in their series-clinching Game 6. All in all, Bonds went just 3 for 18 with 3 singles, no extra base hits, and 6 walks. He didn't have any especially egregious moments, but he just didn't do enough to help his team win. This was a young player on a young team getting their first taste of the playoffs. Nobody thought much of Barry's struggles. He'd be back. Bonds had another excellent season in 1991, finishing second in MVP voting and leading the NL in OPS Plus and OBP. And Bonds was probably deserving of the MVP. Terry Pendleton of the Braves took home the honors because he led Bonds in batting average and hits. Bonds hit more homers, stole more bags, had a higher OPS, and played better defense. Plus, the Pirates won more games, which was usually the reason you'd see votes go this way back then. Regardless, Bonds had home field advantage against Atlanta in the championship series. This was his chance to prove that 1990 was a fluke, and to beat Pendleton head-to-head. His 2 walks were largely inconsequential in the Pirates' 5-1 Game 1 victory. In Game 2, Bonds created offense early, lining a base hit off pitcher Steve Avery, then stealing second and third, but he was stranded, and the Braves went up 1-0 in the top of the 6th. Bobby Bonilla started off the Bucs' 7th with a base hit. Then Bonds rolled into an easy double play. In the 9th, Bonilla got things started again with a double. With a 3-1 count, and his 4th time facing a gassed Avery, Bonds popped out to short. Pirates lose 1-0. In Game 3, Bonds singled, stole a bag, and scored a run, but the Pirates were already down 6-1. They took a 10-3 beating, and Bonds was hitless in his other 4 at-bats. In Game 4, Bonilla got on base to start the 2nd, 4th, and 6th innings. Bonds popped out, struck out, and flew out. He got a weak infield hit in the 8th, advancing to 3rd before being stranded. Since the game was tied in the 10th, Bonds had one more chance to play hero with a runner on and 1 out, and he finally made solid contact, but Lonnie Smith had him played perfectly in left. The Pirates went on to score later that inning, and they held on for a 3-2 victory. Again, no thanks to Bonds. Through 4 games in the series, Bonds was 0 for 10 with 2 walks with runners on base. Going back to last postseason, he was 0 for his last 16 with runners on. A narrative was beginning to form. After another Bonilla double, Bonds flew out to the warning track his first time up in Game 5. 0 for 17. Even after Bonds popped out yet again to start the 5th, the Pirates got to Tom Glavine for a run. In the 6th inning, the Braves did the unthinkable.
They're going to walk Bonilla.
They're walking Bonilla to get to Bonds. How many times in a league championship series do you walk the hitter in front of last year's MVP and maybe this year's MVP?
Braves manager Bobby Cox wanted to get into Barry's head. It worked.
Got him!
With the help of some classic 90s umpiring. Then, in the 8th, Cox did it again. That's the league MVP from last season and one of the frontrunners this year. This would never happen in today's game. Small samples are just too unreliable. 0 for 18 with runners on is nothing compared to a 634 plate appearance sample showing that Barry Bonds is the best hitter in this league. But this isn't Barry Bonds. Some imposter dressed in his uniform took his bat and stepped up against Tom Glavine for the 4th time.
Let's They get him again. They get him again on a fly ball again.
0 for 19. The Pirates held on to win 1-0 regardless. They were taking a 3-2 lead back to Pittsburgh, but their star player was nowhere to be found. In Game 6, Avery faced the minimum through 4, and Doug Drabek was dealing for the Pirates. In the top of the 5th, Bonilla once again got things started, battling his way onto first with a walk. Just one time, Barry, just once. Get this rally going, and you'll be playing for a World Series this time next week. He worked the count full, and Avery delivered.
Takes it to center field and can't.
0 for 20. Drabek finally showed his humanity in the 9th, giving up a single run to lose a masterful performance. The Pirates and Bonds wasted it, and they wouldn't get another in Game 7. Atlanta jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the first. In the bottom half of the inning, Bonds came up with 2 on and 2 out, a chance to answer back right away against John Smoltz.
Lemke gets to it and goes to first.
0 for 21. Bonds finally broke the seal with his first postseason extra base hit in the 4th with a double down the line. Nothing came of it. In the 8th, the Pirates were down 4-0. Smoltz was well over 100 pitches, runners were on the corners, and up stepped Bonds.
Do it now to Mitchell. And the Pirates are still shut out after 8 innings, 4-0. They have left 8.
The Three Rivers crowd, Barry's home fans, those who should love him, showered him with boos. Pittsburgh's MVP, their hero, had failed them. In 1990, Bonds didn't show up. He didn't help his team win, but he didn't really hurt them either. In contrast, the 1991 NLCS might be the biggest single series choke ever by a superstar player. He went 4 for 12 with the bases empty, 0 for 15 with runners on. The Reds pitched him carefully. The Braves pitched around guys to get to him. For the Reds, it was letting anyone but Bonds beat them. The Braves told him, "We're gonna make you beat us. And if you can't, then you lose." According to win probability added, Bonds single-handedly cost Pittsburgh about 2/3 of a win. Any average corner outfielder with an average performance in this series probably swings it enough for a Pirates pennant. Bonds actively hurt his team during this series. Remember Aaron Judge's 2022 ALCS? After a monster regular season, he went 1 for 16 with a walk. Everyone saw the best player on the planet minimized to a road bump for Astros pitchers. Circumstances were a bit different. The Yankees were completely outmatched by Houston. They were swept, and even if Judge performed, they would still probably have lost. Judge takes a ton of heat for that series, and rightfully so. I can only imagine the type of things baseball Twitter would have been saying about Bonds in '91. Anything besides a terrible performance, and the Pirates win that pennant. And he couldn't even deliver that. 1992 was different. Bonds was a free agent after the year, and he took his performance in the regular season to an entirely new level. He finished with an OPS plus north of 200, leading all of baseball in on-base percentage and slugging. He went 30-30 again, won another Gold Glove, and led MLB in walks. Bonds won his second MVP award. He'd achieved every individual award and accolade multiple times over, and he was just 27 years old. Leading his team to a title was all that remained. The Pirates handily won the East, but with Bonds' free agency looming and Bonilla already gone, this could be it. Bonds had his chance at redemption against Atlanta. The Braves were a surprise contender in 1991. Now, they were an established machine of a team, and they once again shut Bonds down in the first 4 games of the '92 series. He had just 1 hit, a single down 8 runs in Game 2. With a 3-1 deficit, it looked like Bonds was about to go out sad for the 3rd straight season. His last at-bat of Game 4 came as the tying run in the 7th.
In scoring position. And for the first time in a month of Sundays, Barry Bonds is hearing boos here at Three Rivers Stadium.
This is it, Barry. If you lose one more, you go down in infamy. Every Pirates fan will remember you as the guy with the bad attitude who only showed up when it mattered least before leaving. Just show them something, man.
Well hit toward the gap in right center field. And finally, the monkey is off the back of Barry Bonds.
He'd been 0 for 28 with runners on in the postseason. Now, he's 1 for his last 1. Bonds singled, stole the bag, and scored on a sac fly his next time up. The Pirates won 7-1, largely thanks to Bonds' contributions. If that was it, at least Bonds gave Pirates fans one positive playoff game to remember him by. But he kept it going in Game 6, absolutely smoking a homer off Glavine in the second, which sparked an 8-run rally. It was his first homer of the playoffs, and it led the Pirates to Game 7. In the first inning, Bonds came up with runners on second and third.
They won't take a chance with Bonds here with first base open.
In just 2 games, Bonds regained his respect.
Right field. Deep enough to get the run in as Justice makes the catch in front of the track.
He got a base hit to lead off the 8th. Then he was forced out on a fielder's choice, and the runner who replaced him at first later got thrown out at home. The Pirates took a 2-0 lead into the 9th, but it could have been more. For 3 straight games, with their backs against the wall, the Pirates came through, led by Bonds, the man who was meant to lead them. And now, they were just 3 outs away from greatness. The man Pittsburgh booed relentlessly just a few days earlier was about to raise a pennant. 3 outs. The champagne is on ice. You're so close, Barry. Most of you know how this goes. Drabek runs out of gas, an error on an easy grounder, and a sloppy relief appearance from Stan Belinda. Francisco Cabrera ropes a single out to Bonds, who has one last chance to keep the game tied and save the series. His throw lands a few feet wide. This was the last time we saw Barry Bonds in a Pirates uniform. After 2.5 awful series, Bonds finally came through for a couple of games in '92, and in an ironic twist of fate, his teammates let him down. He came this close to changing the narrative all the way back in 1992. After departing for the Giants, Bonds' playoff opportunities began to dry up. He led them to 103 wins in '93. They fell to the Dodgers 12-1 on the final game of the season, missing the playoffs by just that one game, again falling short to Atlanta.
Now you can win all the MVP trophies in the world, you can win all the Golden Gloves, but just that one time, just one time, before it's over.
Even with the divisions realigned, the Giants didn't make the playoffs again until 1997. Facing the heavy underdog wildcard Marlins, the Giants lost Game 1 of the division series on a walk-off base hit. Bonds had a double, but didn't impact the game much. In contrast, he had an excellent Game 2, including an RBI double, a sac fly, and a game-tying fielder's choice. But it all led to another Marlins walk-off. Bonds went 0 for 4 as the Giants got swept in Game 3. Outside of 1992 Game 7, I have to imagine that Game 163 is what gave Barry the most nightmares. An 0 for 4 performance against the guy he hated to see get the spotlight. Then, the Diamondbacks came out of nowhere to dominate the division in '99. The Giants finally reclaimed the top spot in 2000. They were the top seed in the National League, and they took an early lead over the wildcard Mets in the division series. Bonds started Game 1 with consecutive hits with runners on base, including an RBI triple in the third. Burks followed with a dagger 3-run homer.
That one is gone if it's fair. Down the line. It is off the foul pole.
The Mets led for most of Game 2, but Bonds sparked a rally in the 9th with a leadoff double. A few batters later, JT Snow caught the lob.
It's gone! Oh, no! It's gone! And we are tied!
Look at Barry on his way home. He's got that feeling again. The vibes are right. Nobody's stopping this team if they walk this game off, but it would have to be in extras. The Mets scored in the top of the 10th, so the Giants were on the ropes again, and look who stepped up to the plate with a man on and 2 outs.
On the inside corner, strike 3 called.
John Franco got the questionable call on an excellent pitch. Bonds battled, and I can't really blame him for getting beat here, but once again, he failed to play hero. Just look at the hack he took up 2-0 in the count. He desperately wanted to put one into the cove, but it wasn't meant to be. Game 3 was a 13-inning marathon. Bonds drew 2 walks, but also made 3 outs with runners on base, including a first pitch pop-out with 2 on in the 13th. The Mets walked it off in the bottom half. Bobby Jones one-hit the Giants in Game 4. Bonds struck out twice and finished the series on an 0 for 10 stretch. 27 games, 97 at-bats, 1 homer. From 1947 through 2000, out of players with at least 97 at-bats, Bonds ranks 122nd of 137 in playoff slugging percentage. Most guys below him were star defensive shortstops or catchers. There are more guys down here known as managers today than there are stars. Look at that, we have the most infamous playoff choker ever on here. But even Bill Buckner made it to 2 World Series. Scrolling to dead last on this list, we see a guy with a bigger playoff moment than Bonds ever had. Okay, 27 games, 116 plate appearances, that's not a big enough sample to prove anything. This game is meant to be played over the course of 6 months. Even then, players can have entire seasons that are fluky. Judging a baseball player on such a small sample is ridiculous when we all acknowledge that the 2020 stats don't count for shit. But those 27 games were when Bonds was most visible. The guy with 3 MVPs, the guy who hit 73 homers the year after collapsing against the Mets. He never had his moment. Sure, he was on SportsCenter every day, and his numbers popped out in the box scores, but what of it? He couldn't deliver the big hit. There were articles written about his futility. Even during his historic 2001, writers mentioned his October shortcomings. And even with 73 homers, the Giants fell short of a playoff spot. On September 19th, 2002, the Giants lost to the Dodgers. They were hanging on to the NL wildcard by a thread, up just 1 game on their rivals. They had 8 games left, and they couldn't let this opportunity slip away. Bonds was in his late 30s now, and the NL West was as competitive as ever. It was very possible that he'd missed his final chance, even as his regular season numbers ascended off this earth. He was mostly pitched around in the final weeks of the season, as he'd been all year, so he had to rely on his teammates to get him there. And they came through. The Giants allowed just 9 runs in their final 8 games that year, and they came out on top every single time. Here it is, Barry. They gave you one last shot. Before we get to Bonds' ultimate postseason, please check down below to see if you're subscribed. Most of you have seen my videos before, but most of you aren't subscribed. Subscribing is a great way to support my channel for free, and if you want to do more, you can hit that join button below for $4 a month. You'll see your screen name here, get early access to my videos, and get some occasional behind the scenes looks, as well as a cool icon next to your name in the comments. And the contributions from my members will help me continue to produce this content. Thanks for hearing me out. Back to the video. Once again, the first hurdle Bonds needed to clear was the Braves. And once again, he wasn't a huge contributor early. Bonds killed a rally with a flyout in the 4th, though the Giants had already gotten to Glavine, and the Giants won 8-5. Bonds hit a solo shot in the 9th inning of Game 2 to cut the deficit to 4 runs. He did the same in the 6th inning of Game 3. They lost both games. The Giants were staring down the barrel yet again. The pitching staff that allowed 9 runs in their final 8 games just got shaken down for 22 runs in 3 games. Bonds got the scoring started early in Game 4. It was a bases-loaded sac fly, so nothing special, but the Giants got to Glavine for 7 runs and handedly evened the series. This is it, Barry, another do-or-die game in Atlanta. For once, Barry played hero. He scored the opening run in the 2nd before homering in the 4th. Personally giving the Giants a 2-0 lead. Up 2-0 in the bottom of the 9th in Atlanta. What could possibly go wrong? Even with Chipper Jones up as the go-ahead run, Bonds wouldn't be denied this time.
And the Giants are going to the NLCS.
Come on, Barry. Put that stoicism aside. We all know how much this means to you.
A smile from Barry Bonds.
A come-from-behind series victory over Atlanta, with Bonds largely responsible for the clincher. He'd finally finished the job he'd fell short of a decade earlier. His series stats matched up pretty well with his season stats for the first time. 1 homer in 27 games to 3 homers in 5. But now, he had another series to play. He kept it going in Game 1 of the NLCS, delivering the big blow in the top of the 2nd. The Cardinals walked him 3 other times, 2 of which led to runs scoring later in the inning. He didn't do much in Game 2, but the Giants won yet again. In Game 3, Bonds took the biggest swing of his postseason career.
Bonds to right. This one is way back. It's headed to the water. This game is tied.
The The game-tying 3-run blast in the 5th guaranteed that the Cardinals wouldn't pitch to him again unless they were forced to. They ultimately lost Game 3, but Bonds scored both times he was walked in Game 4, and the Giants won by a run. In Game 5, Barry came up in the 8th with the bases loaded down a run. Bonds just missed another signature moment, but he did just enough to tie the ball game, which set the Giants up for a walk-off in the 9th.
Into right field, a base hit. The throw by Drew to the plate. The Giants are going to the World Series.
Bonds was the first guy out to meet Kenny Lofton, the man who finally got him to a pennant. Bonds' championship series was even better than his division series, single-handedly increasing the Giants' chances of a title by about 9%, according to CWPA. Barry showed up, and so did his team, and it resulted in the first pennant for the greatest player of a generation. It's time, Barry. 4 wins away from your final achievement in this game. Bonds helped the Giants to an early series lead with his 5th homer of the postseason. Even though they fell behind 5-0 early in Game 2, Bonds drew 2 rally starting walks, closing the gap. The Giants fell behind again in the 8th, but Barry wasn't done yet.
Ripped into right field. It's a 1-run game as Bonds gets his 2nd of the series.
You've all seen this clip before. Tim Salmon watched his all-star teammate give up an estimated 485-foot bomb, and he couldn't help but admire it. That's the farthest ball I've ever seen hit. This is Barry's signature moment. The clip of this homer, posted on YouTube over a decade ago by some random dude, has over 11 million views. More views than his upper deck shot at Yankee Stadium, his record-breaking 756th homer, his iconic battle with Eric Gagne, Barry Bonds by Kanye West, and Jim Leyland cussing him out combined. In that moment, even though the Giants lost the game, Barry Bonds went from the biggest playoff disappointer of all time to being known for the greatest postseason of all time. And there was still more to come. Bonds homered again in Game 3, and even though the Giants lost, the Angels were done pitching to him. They intentionally walked him 3 times in Game 4. The Giants won 4-3. Bonds sparked an absolute beatdown in Game 5. Going 3 for 4 with the walk in the 16-4 victory. The Giants were 1 game away, heading back to Anaheim.
That is crushed deep into the night, and it's 4-0 San Francisco.
That was the exclamation point. Bonds just put his team up 4 runs, and all but clinched the series MVP. The Giants took a 5-run lead into the 7th inning before the Angels finally got Bonds out. This was the closest Barry ever got. The Angels scored 3 runs in the 7th, then 3 more in the 8th, and the Giants lost the game with Bonds waiting in the hole. In Game 7, Bonds roped the line out right into the shift his first time up. His next time up, the Giants were down 3 runs. He got a base hit, popped out, and walked in his last 3 plate appearances. The Giants didn't score again. The whole world saw Superman swing a bat for 7 games. He went 8 for 17, with half of those hits leaving the park and another 2 being doubles. He also drew 13 walks. Bonds got on base 70% of the time. He is the all-time leader in World Series on-base percentage and slugging percentage. He held the record for most homers in a postseason until Randy Arozarena hit 10 in 2020. He still holds the record by a wide margin for most walks in a postseason. Every opposing team wanted nothing to do with him, and he still mashed 8 homers. It was a direct reversal of his worst postseason in 1991. Nobody on a baseball diamond has ever been as feared as Barry Bonds during October of 2002. In just 1 series, just 30 plate appearances, he completely changed a decade-old narrative. He was a playoff choker. Until he wasn't. All it takes is getting hot at the right time, one time. Regardless, Bonds couldn't win a ring. Whether it's fate, karma, or just luck, this game will humble you. Even if you're so good that you're making a mockery of 100 years of record keeping. Bonds had 1 more postseason performance the next year. For the 2nd time in his career, his heavily favored Giants team lost to the wildcard Marlins. They walked him 8 times out of 18 plate appearances, with 6 of them being intentional walks. He was pretty much taken out of the series by being pitched around. Looking at his entire postseason career, if we extrapolate his stats over 162 games, Bonds would have been a 30-30 player with a 433 OBP. After 12 years of struggling, it took one deep playoff run for his career numbers to normalize into something resembling a Bonds-type season. Judge just finished his second Bondsian season and should win another MVP. Because of his last few postseason performances, Judge is known as a playoff choker. The 2024 postseason could be a continuation of that narrative, or it could be Judge's first step towards dismantling that label. It's completely up to him. The best players are the best players. Barry Bonds is the best player, and he shattered the choker label in 2002 like it was an 100-mile-per-hour Troy Percival fastball. Even though he couldn't carry the Giants to that ring, this is his legacy, now and forever.